The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with beings from 200 worlds. Some floated in liquid tanks. Others stood on legs that numbered from 2 to 12. A few existed as clouds of light. They had gathered here for 10,000 years to decide the fate of the galaxy. And today they gathered to watch humanity fall. Ambassador Rollis stood at the central platform. His gray skin reflected the blue lights of the chamber. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched young races join the council with hope in their hearts, only to be crushed by older and stronger powers. Humans, he believed, would be no different. The Torani Dominion has made its demands clear, Rollis announced to the assembly. 3 human colony worlds in the Outer Rim must be surrendered. The humans have 72 hours to evacuate their people. After that time, the Dominion fleet will take what it wants. High Commander Vectis stood on the opposite platform. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with scales the color of dried blood. His species had conquered 30 worlds in the last 1,000 years. Not once had they faced true resistance. Weak species surrendered. Foolish species died. There was no third option. "We are being generous," Vectis said. His voice was deep and cold. "We could simply take what we want without warning. But we respect the Council's traditions. We give the humans a chance to run." Laughter filled the chamber. It came from dozens of species, each making sounds in their own way. Some clicked. Some whistled. Some vibrated the air itself. But the meaning was the same. They found this situation amusing. The human ambassador was a small woman named Jisoo Kung. She stood alone on her platform, surrounded by giants and monsters and beings of impossible power. She did not laugh. She did not cry. She simply waited for the noise to stop. "May I speak?" she asked when the chamber grew quiet. Rollis waved a thin hand. "You may request time to organize your evacuation. The Council will grant reasonable extensions for humanitarian purposes." "I am not requesting an extension," Jisoo said. "I am requesting clarification. The Torani Dominion believes we will surrender our worlds without a fight. I want to understand why." More laughter. This time, Vectis himself joined in. The sound was like rocks grinding together. "Human," he said, "we have studied your species. We know what you are. Your people make paintings about the sadness of war. You write songs about soldiers who cry. You build monuments to remember those you have lost in battle. You teach your children that fighting is wrong." He stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow over her platform. "You are afraid. Your entire culture is built on fear. This is not an insult. It is simply truth." Jisoo did not step back. "You are correct," she said. "We do fear war." The chamber fell silent. Even Rollis seemed surprised by this admission. "We fear it deeply," Jisoo continued. "We have feared it for thousands of years. We have written millions of books about its horrors. We have created laws to prevent it. We have built international organizations dedicated to peace. We teach our children about the terrible cost of violence because we want them to understand what war truly means." Vectis smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Then you understand why you must surrender. You cannot fight us. You do not have the stomach for it." "No," Jisoo said. "I do not think you understand at all." In the corner of the chamber, a small being named Mevik watched this exchange with growing concern. He was a scholar, dedicated to studying the cultures of the galaxy. He had spent 30 years researching humanity. He knew things about them that others did not. And he was afraid. "High Commander," Mevik called out, stepping forward. "I must speak." Vectis turned to look at the small scholar with annoyance. "What do you want?" "I have studied the humans extensively. Their fear of war is not what you think it is. It does not come from weakness. It comes from experience. Mevik pulled up holographic images. Ancient human cities in ruins. Mushroom clouds rising over destroyed landscapes. Mass graves. Burning forests. They fear war because they know exactly what it looks like. They have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. They have developed weapons that can destroy entire planets. They have killed billions of their own kind in conflicts we cannot even imagine. Vectis laughed again. They fought each other because they had no real enemy. Now they face the Tarani Dominion. It is different. It is not different, Mevik insisted. You do not understand. Human fear is not the fear of prey. It is the fear of a predator who knows what it is capable of. They fear war because they know they are very, very good at it. But nobody listened. The council had already made up its mind. Humans were soft. Humans were weak. Humans would run. Jisoo Kang left the chamber without another word. She walked to the communication center and opened a channel to Earth Command. Her message was short. They have given us 72 hours. They expect us to evacuate. They believe we are afraid. On the other end of the transmission, Admiral Byung-ho sat in silence for a long moment. Then he spoke. Are we afraid? Yes, Jisoo answered. We are. Good, the Admiral said. Fear keeps us sharp. Send the order to all colonies. No evacuation. We stand and fight. Far away, on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, Captain Kang Tae received his orders. He read them twice to make sure he understood. Then he called his crew to the main deck. Lieutenant Yuna Park was the first to arrive. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes were calculating, already running through tactical scenarios. Sergeant Dae-ho came next, his scarred hands resting easy at his sides. Dr. Hanasu followed, her medical kit already packed and ready. And finally, Private Wu Jin, the youngest member of the crew, his hands shaking slightly as he stood at attention. Captain Tae looked at each of them in turn. The galaxy thinks we are cowards, he said. They think our fear makes us weak. They believe we will run from this fight. He paused, letting the words sink in. They are wrong. Our fear does not make us weak. It makes us dangerous. Because we know exactly what we are about to do. We know the cost. We know the horror. And we choose to fight anyway. He turned to face the viewport, where distant stars waited like cold and ancient gods. In 72 hours, the Tarani Dominion will learn what human fear really means. They will learn that we do not fear death. We do not fear pain. We fear only one thing. He looked back at his crew. We fear what we become when someone threatens our home. The crew stood in silence. And somewhere, across the vast darkness of space, 300 Tarani warships prepared for what they believed would be an easy victory. They had no idea what was coming. The colony world of Nu. Bazin was beautiful in the morning light. Green hills rolled toward the horizon. Rivers cut through valleys filled with farms and small towns. Cities rose in the distance, their towers catching the gold of the rising sun. 8 million people called this world home. And in 48 hours, an army was coming to take it from them. Governor Minjiang stood on the balcony of her office, looking out at the peaceful landscape. She had not slept in 2 days. Her eyes were red and tired, but her voice was steady when she spoke to her people. The evacuation ships are ready, she announced through every screen and speaker on the planet. Anyone who wishes to leave may do so. There is no shame in choosing safety. We will not judge you. We will not blame you. If you have children, if you have elderly parents, if you simply do not wish to fight, then go. Go with our blessing. She paused, letting her words settle over the silent world. But I am staying. This is my home. I was born here. My parents are buried here. My children took their first steps here. I will not give it away without a fight. If you feel the same, then stand with me. Not because I order you to, but because you choose to. The evacuation ships waited in the spaceports for 6 hours. When they finally launched, they carried less than 3% of the population. The rest had made their choice dot in orbit above the planet. The U.E.'s Defiance hung like a dark sword against the stars. Captain Kang Tae stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display. 47 human ships had answered the call. They were everything the colonies could spare. Against them, the Torani were bringing 300 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything in the human fleet. Lieutenant Yuna Park stood beside the captain, her fingers moving across her console. Numbers and projections filled her screen. She studied them without expression. "The odds are not good," she said finally. "Tell me." 17% chance of victory in a direct fight. Maybe 20% if we are lucky. Captain Tae nodded slowly. Then we do not fight directly. Yuna looked at him. What do you mean? The Torani expect us to form a defensive line. They expect us to meet them in open space, ship against ship, gun against gun. That is how they have won every war they have ever fought. He turned to face her. We are not going to do that. We are going to fight like humans. He brought up a map of the star system. Asteroid fields, debris clouds, orbital platforms, dead moons. Every piece of rock and metal within 1,000,000 kilometers of New Bizan appeared on the display. We have 72 hours, he said. By the time those hours are over, I want this entire system to be a death trap. Every asteroid will hide a missile battery. Every debris field will contain mines. Every SH. Addo will hold a ship waiting to strike. When the Torani arrive, they will fly into a storm of fire. Yuna studied the map. For the first time, something like hope appeared in her eyes. It will take everything we have. Then we give everything we have. On the surface of New Bizan, Sergeant Daeho gathered his soldiers in an underground bunker. They were a mix of professional troops and civilian volunteers. Some had been fighting for 20 years. Others had never held a gun before yesterday. But they all shared the same look in their eyes. They were afraid. And they were angry. Private Wu Jin stood at the back of the group. He was 20 years old, barely out of training. His hands would not stop shaking. He tried to hide them in his pockets, but Sergeant Daeho noticed anyway. The old sergeant walked over and stood beside him. He did not say anything at first. He just stood there, solid and calm, like a rock in a stormy sea. You are afraid, Daeho said finally. It was not a question. Wu Jin swallowed hard. Yes, Sergeant, good. Daeho turned to look at him. Fear is good. Fear means you understand what is coming. Fear means you are not a fool. He put a heavy hand on the young man's shoulder. But fear is just a feeling. What matters is what you do with it. You can let it control you, or you can use it. Make it sharp. Make it focused. Turn it into something that keeps you alive. How? Wu Jin asked. Practice, Daeho said. You practice being afraid and fighting anyway. You do it once. Then you do it again. And again. Until it becomes as natural as breathing. He smiled, just a little. By the time this is over, you will have plenty of practice. In the medical bay of the Defiance, Dr. Hana Su was reviewing captured Torani biological data. She had been studying their species for days, looking for anything that might give humanity an advantage. And she had found something interesting. Captain, she said over the com system, I need to speak with you. Kang Tae arrived 10 minutes later. Hana pulled up her findings on the main screen. "The Torani are powerful," she said. "Strong, fast, excellent warriors in short battles. But look at this." She pointed to a series of graphs. "Their biology is designed for quick victories. They have no concept of prolonged conflict. Their bodies burn energy at an incredible rate. Their minds are not built for extended stress. Every war they have fought has been over in days or weeks." "What are you saying?" "I am saying that if we make this fight last, they will break before we do. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We chased our prey for hours, sometimes days, until they collapsed from exhaustion. Our bodies and minds are designed for long struggles. Theirs are not." Captain Tay smiled grimly. "So we do not try to win quickly. We make them bleed, slowly, day after day, week after week, until they cannot take any more." "Exactly." Far away, aboard the Torani flagship, High Commander Vectis was making his final preparations. His fleet was the largest ever assembled by the Dominion. 300 warships carrying 50,000 ground troops. More than enough to crush any resistance. Scholar Mevik stood before him, trying one last time to make him understand. "You are making a mistake," the scholar said. "Human history is filled with examples of what happens when they are pushed into a corner. They do not surrender. They fight until there is nothing left. And they find ways to win that no one expects." Vectis laughed. "They are soft. They cry at funerals. They write poetry about peace. They are not warriors." "They are the most dangerous kind of warriors," Mevik insisted. "They are warriors who hate war. That is why they fight so hard to end it. And they will do anything, sacrifice anything, to protect what they love." But Vectis was not listening. He was already imagining his victory parade, already planning how he would divide the conquered human worlds among his officers. "In 48 hours," he said, "the humans will learn their place in this galaxy. They will learn that fear means weakness, and weakness means death." Mevik lowered his head. He had done everything he could. Now he could only watch and wait, and pray that somehow, impossibly, the humans would prove him right. Across the void of space, 47 human ships waited in the darkness. On the surface of New Bizin, 8 million people prepared for the fight of their lives. In bunkers and trenches and hidden positions, soldiers checked their weapons and said their prayers. The storm was coming, and humanity was ready to meet it. The Torani fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metal predators. 300 warships filled the void, their hulls gleaming with weapon ports and armor plates. High Commander Vectis stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. This would be easy. This would be quick. "Scan for enemy positions," he ordered. His officers obeyed. The results came back moments later, and for the first time, Vectis felt a flicker of confusion. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "the human fleet is not in defensive formation. They are scattered across the entire system, some near the asteroid belt, some behind the moons, some in the debris fields. There is no organized line." Vectis snorted. "They are hiding, like prey animals. It does not matter. Advance on the planet. They cannot stop us by running." The Torani fleet moved forward in perfect formation. 200 ships in the main assault wave, 100 in reserve. They cut through space like a blade, aimed directly at new BUSAN dot. They were halfway to the planet when the system came alive. The first missiles came from an asteroid that Torani sensors had marked as empty rock. 30 projectiles screamed out of hidden launchers, slamming into the lead ships before they could react. 2 Torani cruisers exploded in balls of fire. A third lost its engines and drifted helplessly. Vectis roared in anger. Where did that come from? Destroy that asteroid. His ships opened fire, turning the asteroid to dust. But more missiles were already coming from a different direction. Then another. Then another. The asteroid field that surrounded the system was filled with hidden weapons. Every rock, every chunk of debris, every shadow held death. "They have turned the entire system into a trap," the tactical officer said, his voice shaking. "There are weapons platforms everywhere." "Then we push through," Vectis snarled. "We have 300 ships. We can afford losses. Advance at full speed." The Terrani fleet charged forward, accepting casualties to gain ground. Ships exploded on all sides. But the Dominion had numbers, and numbers would win. Eventually, they broke through the outer defenses and reached open space near the planet. That was when the human fleet, attacked. Captain Kong Tae had been waiting for this moment. His 47 ships had stayed hidden, watching the Terrani advance, letting them spend their energy on the automated defenses. Now, with the enemy scattered and frustrated, he gave the order. "All ships, attack pattern Delta. Target their supply vessels first." The human fleet did not try to fight the Terrani head-on. Instead, they struck from multiple directions at once, hitting the support ships that carried fuel and ammunition. Without those supplies, the Terrani warships would become useless hulks within days. Lieutenant Una Park commanded the tactical station with cold efficiency. Her fingers danced across the controls, coordinating the attacks of a dozen vessels. She had studied human naval history for years. She knew every trick, every strategy, every desperate gamble that humanity had ever used in war. And she used them all now. "Execute the Nelson maneuver," she ordered. 3 of the oldest human ships broke formation and charged directly at the Terrani center. It looked like suicide. The Terrani gunners focused their fire on these easy targets, pouring destruction into them. The ships burned and died, but their sacrifice created a gap in the Terrani formation. And through that gap, the rest of the human fleet poured fire into the enemy's heart. 50 Terrani ships exploded in the span of 3 minutes. High Commander Vectis watched in disbelief as his perfect formation fell apart. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "They are sacrificing their own ships. They are trading cheap pieces for valuable ones," Mevik said quietly from the corner of the bridge. "It is a human tactic. They have been doing it for thousands of years. They call it sacrifice. They are very good at it." The battle in space raged for hours. The Terrani still had more ships, but the humans refused to fight fairly. They struck and retreated. They used asteroids as shields. They fired from impossible angles. Every time Vectis thought he had them cornered, they slipped away and attacked from somewhere else. Finally, Vectis made a decision. Begin ground invasion. If we cannot crush their fleet, we will take their planet. Without their home, they will have nothing to fight for. Dropships launched from the Terrani carriers, carrying thousands of soldiers toward the surface of New Bizon. They expected to find terrified civilians huddled in their homes. Waiting to be conquered, they found empty cities. Sergeant Deho watched the Terrani landing through his binoculars. He was hidden in a bunker 3 kilometers from their drop zone, surrounded by 50 soldiers. Private Wu Jin crouched beside him, gripping his rifle with white knuckles. "They are searching the buildings," Wu Jin whispered. "Let them search," Deho replied. "They will not find anyone. The civilians evacuated to underground shelters days ago. The cities are empty." "Then what are they finding?" Deho smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Surprises." The first Terrani squad entered a tall building in the center of the capital city. They searched room by room, floor by floor, finding nothing boo. Abandoned furniture and personal belongings. They reached the top floor and found a single item sitting in the middle of the room. A small box with a blinking red light. The explosion destroyed the entire building. Similar explosions echoed across the city as other Tyranny squads triggered other traps. In the span of an hour, the Dominion lost more ground troops than they had lost in their previous 5 wars combined. Vectis was screaming orders from orbit, demanding that his soldiers advance despite the losses. But his soldiers were learning something that the Tyranny had never experienced before. Fear that the humans were not in the cities. They were in the wilderness, in the mountains, in the forests, in tunnels that ran beneath the surface for hundreds of kilometers. And they only came out at night. The Tyranny had excellent vision in daylight, but in darkness they were nearly blind. Humans, who had evolved as both prey and predator, could see well enough to hunt. Sergeant Day Ho led the first night raid. His team moved through the darkness like ghosts, approaching a Tyranny forward base. The enemy soldiers were gathered around bright lights, trying to push back the terrifying blackness that surrounded them. They never saw the humans coming. The attack lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, the entire base was destroyed. Not a single Tyranny survived, and Daeho's team disappeared back into the night without losing a single soldier. Private Wu Jin stood over the body of an enemy he had killed. His hands were still shaking, but something had changed inside him. The fear was still there, but now there was something else alongside it. Anger, pride, determination. "Sergeant," he said quietly, "what do we do now?" Daeho reloaded his weapon. "We rest for 2 hours. Then we hit another base, and another, and another. We keep hitting them until they break, or until we do." "What if we break first?" The old sergeant looked at him with eyes that had seen too many battles, too many friends die, too many horrors to count. "We will not break. Humans do not break. We bend, we crack, we bleed, but we do not break. That is what they do not understand. That is what they will learn." Far above, watching from orbit, High Commander Vectis received the reports of the night raid. And for the first time in his long career, he felt a cold claw of doubt grip his heart. What kind of species was this? What kind of people could fight like this? In the chaos of the battle, Private Wu Jin managed to do something that would change everything. Using a damaged Tyranny communication device, he patched into the galactic network and broadcast footage of the fighting. Images of humans standing against impossible odds. Images of sacrifice and courage and fierce determination. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in stunned silence. The soft humans. The fearful humans. The weak humans. They were watching them fight like nothing they had ever seen before. 3 weeks had passed since the Tyranny invasion began. 3 weeks of constant battle. 3 weeks of blood and fire and death. And still, impossibly, the humans had not surrendered. High Commander Vectis stood in his command center, staring at reports that made no sense. His fleet controlled the space above New Bizon. His army had landed over 40,000 soldiers on the surface. By every measure of warfare that the Dominion understood, the humans should have been crushed in the first 3 days. Instead, his forces were dying, not in great battles, not in glorious charges. They were dying in ambushes and traps and night raids. They were dying from snipers who fired once and then vanished. They were dying from bombs hidden in the rubble of destroyed buildings. They were dying from 1,000 small cuts that never stopped bleeding. "We have lost 12,000 soldiers," his aide reported. "Another 3,000 are wounded too badly to fight. Our supply lines are constantly attacked. The troops are exhausted. They are afraid to sleep because the humans attack at night. They are afraid to eat because the humans poison water supplies. They are afraid to advance because every step could trigger an explosion. They should not be afraid." Vectis roared. "They are Tyranny warriors. They have conquered a dozen worlds. Those worlds surrendered, Scholar Mevik said quietly. He had remained on the flagship, watching events unfold with growing horror and fascination. None of them fought like this. None of them knew how. Vectus turned on him with fury in his eyes. Then explain this to me, Scholar. Explain how these soft, fearful creatures are destroying my army. Mevik walked to the viewport and looked down at the planet below. Smoke rose from 100 fires. The surface was scarred by weeks of warfare. And somewhere down there, in tunnels and forests and hidden bunkers, millions of humans were still fighting. They are not fighting to win, he said slowly. They know they cannot win. Not against your numbers, your firepower, your ships. They know they are going to die. And why do they fight? Because fighting is not about winning for them. It is about making you pay. Every soldier you lose, every ship you sacrifice, every day this war continues is a victory for them. They are not trying to defeat you. They are trying to hurt you so badly that you will never forget the cost of attacking humanity. On the surface of New Bizin, Dr. Hana Su was working in an underground hospital that had been carved from an old mining tunnel. The wounded came in constantly. Soldiers with burns and broken bones and missing limbs. Civilians caught in crossfire. Children who had seen too much horror for their young minds to process. She had not slept more than 2 hours at a time in 3 weeks. Her hands were steady from years of practice, but her heart was heavy with grief. She had lost so many patients, so many friends, so many good people who deserved better than to die in a tunnel beneath a burning world. A young nurse approached her as she finished treating a soldier with shrapnel wounds. Doctor, we have a new patient. A Torani. Hannah looked up. A prisoner? Yes. He was captured in last night's raid. He is wounded. Sergeant Deho says you should treat him. For a moment, Hannah felt a wave of anger wash over her. The Torani had killed thousands of her people. They had destroyed cities. They had turned her beautiful world into a graveyard. Why should she save one of them? But then she took a deep breath and remembered who she was. She was a doctor. She had taken an oath to heal, not to judge. Bring him in. The Torani soldier was young, barely an adult by his species standards. His leg was badly wounded, and he looked at her with eyes full of fear. He expected to be tortured, to be killed, to suffer as the humans had suffered. Instead, Hana cleaned his wound and began to treat it with the same care she would give any patient. Why? The Torani asked in broken human language. Why do you help me? Hannah did not stop working. Because the war is not your fault. You are just a soldier following orders. And because helping you proves that we are not what your leaders say we are. We are not monsters. We are not savages. We fight when we must, but we do not lose our humanity in the process. The Torani was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke again. Your people are strange. You cry for your enemies. You mourn your own dead. You hate this war. I can see it in your eyes. And yet you keep fighting. How? Because we must, Hana said simply. Because if we do not, then everything we love will be destroyed. We fight because we have no choice. And we hate it because we understand what fighting really costs. In orbit, the situation was changing. For 3 weeks, the human fleet had fought a guerrilla war in space, striking at Torani ships and retreating before they could be destroyed. They had lost vessels, good ships with good crews, but they had hurt the Dominion badly in return. Now, something new was appearing on the sensors. Captain Kang Tae stood on the bridge of the damaged Defiance, watching the display with exhausted eyes. His arm was in a sling from wounds he had taken in an earlier battle. His uniform was stained with blood and smoke. But when he saw what was coming, a smile crossed his face. "Lieutenant," he said, "what am I seeing?" Una Park studied the readings. Her own face was pale and tired, but her voice was strong. "Ships, Captain. Human ships. Hundreds of them. They were not warships, not military vessels. They were freighters and passenger liners, and mining craft and private yachts. Ships from every human colony in the galaxy. Ships that had been hastily fitted with weapons and armor. Ships crewed by volunteers who had dropped everything to answer the call. Humanity had not sent a fleet. Humanity had sent a crusade. Messages flooded the communication channels. Civilians who had never fired a gun, offering to fight. Veterans who had sworn never to pick up a weapon again, strapping on their old armor. Teachers and doctors and farmers and artists, all coming to stand with their brothers and sisters on New Bizon. "We heard what was happening," said the captain of a converted cargo ship. "We could not stand by and watch. We are human. When one of us is threatened, all of us respond." High Commander Vectis watched the human reinforcements arrive with growing despair. His fleet was battered. His army was bleeding. His soldiers were terrified. And now, instead of facing a broken enemy, he faced a force that seemed to grow stronger with every passing day. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "We killed thousands of them. We destroyed their ships. We burned their cities. They should be broken." "They cannot be broken," Mevik said. "That is what I tried to tell you from the beginning. Human history is filled with moments like this. When they are pushed to the edge, they do not fall. They push back. They find strength that should not exist. They become something that cannot be defeated by force alone." Captain Tay broadcast a message to the entire Tarani fleet. His voice was calm, but carried a weight that made every being who heard it fall silent. "You came to our world expecting us to run. You expected us to be afraid. You were right. We are afraid. We fear this battle. We fear death. We fear the pain and loss that war brings. But we fear something else more. We fear living in a galaxy where our people can be threatened without consequence. We fear a future where our children are not safe. We fear surrendering to those who would take everything we have built." He paused, letting the words sink in. "So yes, we are afraid. But our fear does not make us weak. It makes us fight harder. It makes us sacrifice more. It makes us willing to do whatever is necessary to protect what we love. You wanted to see what humans do when we are afraid. Now you know. We stand, we fight, we bleed, and we never, ever stop." Across the void of space, the human fleet advanced. In the tunnels below New Bizon, soldiers prepared for another night of battle. In hospitals and bunkers and hidden shelters, millions of civilians waited with hope in their hearts. And aboard the Tarani flagship, High Commander Vectis finally understood the truth that Scholar Mevik had tried to teach him. He had made a terrible mistake. The Tarani flagship hung in space, alone and surrounded. What had once been the greatest fleet in the Dominion's history was now a scattered collection of damaged ships, drifting wreckage, and burning hulls. Of the 300 warships that had arrived with such confidence, fewer than 90 remained capable of fighting. And they were outnumbered. High Commander Vectis stood before his communications console. His scales, once bright with pride, had turned dull with exhaustion and defeat. His officers watched him in silence, waiting for orders that would not come. For the first time in his long career, Vectis had no idea what to do. "It is over," Scholar Mevik said softly. "You know this." Vectis did not respond. He stared at the tactical display, watching human ships move into position around his fleet. They were not attacking. They were waiting, giving him a chance to end this without more death. "If you continue fighting," Mevik continued, "every ship you have left will be destroyed. Every soldier on that planet will die. and it will accomplish nothing. The humans will still survive. The Dominion will still have lost. The only question is how many more of your people will die before you accept the truth. The truth, Vectis repeated. His voice was hollow. And what is the truth? That you were wrong. That we were all wrong. The humans are not weak. They never were. Their fear, their poetry, their memorials for the dead, these were never signs of weakness. They were signs of wisdom. They understand war in a way we never did. And that understanding makes them more dangerous than any species in this galaxy. Vectis closed his eyes. He thought of all the young soldiers he had sent to die on that planet below, all the ships he had watched burn, all the confidence he had felt when this began. It all seemed like a dream from another life. "Send the signal," he said finally. "We surrender." The message went out across all frequencies. Within minutes, the fighting on the surface stopped. Human soldiers emerged from their hiding places, weapons ready but holding fire. Torani troops put down their arms and waited for the end. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Kang Te received the surrender with no celebration. His ship was barely holding together. Half his crew was dead or wounded. He had lost friends, good people who would never see their homes again. Victory had come, but the cost had been terrible. Lieutenant Una Park stood beside him, her face as calm as ever, but her eyes showing something that might have been grief. "It is over, Captain." "No," Tay said quietly. "This battle is over. But what comes next will be just as important. We need to make sure this never happens again." 1 month later, the Galactic Council assembled once more. The Great Hall was filled with the same 200 species that had gathered before. But the atmosphere was completely different. There was no laughter now, no mockery. Only silence and careful attention. Ambassador Jisoo Kong stood at the human platform. She was different from the woman who had stood here before the war. There was a weight in her eyes, a gravity that came from watching her people suffer and triumph. But her voice was steady and strong. "We did not want this war," she said. "We never wanted it. We asked for peace. We offered negotiation. We tried every path except violence before we raised our weapons. But when violence was forced upon us, we fought. We fought harder than anyone expected. We fought harder than we knew we could. And we won." She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives. "Now you know what humanity is capable of. You know that we are not the soft, weak species you believed us to be. You know that our fear is not cowardice, but awareness. You know that when we fight with everything we have, for as long as we must, until victory or death." Ambassador Rollis, who had once dismissed humanity so easily, spoke carefully. "What do you want from us?" "We want what we have always wanted," Jisoo replied. "Peace, trade, cooperation. We do not seek revenge against the Torani. We do not want to conquer anyone. We want to live in a galaxy where all species are treated with respect, where diplomacy comes before violence, where the strong do not prey upon the weak." She stepped forward, her eyes moving across every face in the room. "But let me be clear. If any species threatens humanity again, if any power tries to take what is ours by force, we will respond. Not because we want to, not because we enjoy war, but because we will never allow our people to be victims. That is our promise. That is our warning. And that is our truth." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, the representatives began to respond, not with mockery, but with respect. Treaties were proposed. Alliances were offered. The galaxy that had dismissed humanity for 50 years now scrambled to win their friendship. On New Bizan, the rebuilding had begun. Cities that had burned were being reconstructed. Farms that had been destroyed were being replanted. Life was returning to a world that had seen too much death. Sergeant Day-Ho stood at a memorial that had been built on a hill, overlooking the capital. The names of the fallen were carved into black stone, thousands of them, each one a person who had given everything for their home. Private Wu Jin stood beside him. The young man was different now. The shaking hands were gone. In their place was a steadiness that came from surviving the worst and coming through the other side. "Sergeant," he said, "do you think it was worth it? All the death? All the pain?" Day-Ho did not answer for a long time. He read the names on the memorial, some of them people he had known, people he had trained, people he had fought beside. "I do not know if it was worth it," he said finally. "I do not think that question has an answer. But I know this. These people did not die for nothing. They died so that the rest of us could live. They died so that our children could grow up free. They died because they believed some things are more important than survival." He turned to look at Wu Jin. "That is what it means to be human. We know the cost of war. We feel every death. We carry the weight of every sacrifice. And we choose to fight anyway, when fighting is the only option left. Not because we are brave, not because we are fearless, but because we love something enough to die for it." In the medical bay of a hospital ship orbiting the planet, Dr. Hanasu was treating the last of her patients. The Turani soldier she had saved weeks ago was among them. His wound had healed, and he would soon be returned to his people as part of the prisoner exchange. "I have thought about what you told me," the Turani said as she checked his bandages. "About why you helped me. About fighting without losing your humanity. I did not understand it then. I think I understand it now." Hannah smiled tiredly. "And what do you understand? That you are not our enemies. You never were. You were just people trying to protect your home. And when it was over, you chose mercy instead of revenge." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "My people Faug." H-tier was weakness. But you showed us that fear can be wisdom, and wisdom can be strength. "I hope your people remember that," Hana said. "I will make sure they do." Far away, aboard the rebuilt Defiance, Captain Kong Tae stood on the bridge and looked out at the stars. The galaxy was different now. Humanity was different. They had proven themselves in the fires of war, and nothing would ever be the same. Yuna Park joined him at the viewport. "The Council has ratified the peace treaty. The Turani Dominion has agreed to all our terms. The war is officially over." Tae nodded slowly. "Good, is it?" Yuna asked. "We won, Captain. But at what cost? How many people did we lose? How many families were destroyed? Was any of it truly worth celebrating?" "No," Tae said. "We do not celebrate. We remember. We mourn. We honor those who fell. And we work to make sure their sacrifice meant something." He turned to face her. "That is the human way. We do not forget the price of victory. We carry it with us always. It reminds us why we fight so hard for peace." In the archives of 1,000 Worlds, Scholar Mevik's words were being recorded and studied. His analysis of humanity had become the definitive work on the subject. Required reading for any species that wanted to understand these strange, contradictory creatures. The final passage of his work would be quoted for centuries to come. They asked if humans fear battle. The answer is yes. They fear it more than any species in this galaxy. They fear it so deeply that they build their entire civilization around avoiding it. They create art to remember its horror. They write laws to prevent it. They teach their children that violence is the last resort, never the first. And that is exactly why you should never force them to fight one. Because when humans go to war, they go with full knowledge of what they are doing. They carry the weight of every death, every wound, every destroyed dream. They suffer in ways that other species cannot imagine. But they do not stop. They never stop. They fight through the fear, through the pain, through the grief. They fight until victory or extinction. And they do this not because they are warriors, but because they love something enough to sacrifice everything for it. They said humans fear battle. They were right. And that is precisely what makes humanity the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Above New Bizon, the stars shone cold and bright. A new chapter in galactic history had begun. And at its center, standing among the ruins of a war they never wanted but refused to lose, was humanity. Afraid, hurting, mourning God, and absolutely unconquerable.